let's talk some Indiana football for a brief minute or two. What is our thoughts about the state of Indiana football? I have, since the end of the Kevin Wilson tenure, now into the Tom O'Brien tenure, again, week after week after week, this team goes out there with pretty marginal talent. The recruiting has been a little bit better. This last class has been pretty good, a class and a half, but it's nowhere close to where it should be to play with those kinds of teams, but typically they do. This has been year after year after year, especially against Michigan. They took them to overtime a couple years ago, double overtime. Took Ohio State. They were throwing the ball in the end zone against that 2014 team, right? Or the 2015 team, the 2014.
They all ran together back then.
Yeah, throwing the ball in the end zone to win the game. And even though the scores have stretched out the last couple of years against the Buckeyes, it's been close with about 10 minutes left. And will Indiana ever get it right? Do they have that opportunity? Do they have the recruiting base? Do they have the resources?
Well, they have a coach, Tom Allen.
I said Tom O'Brien. He used to coach the Anyway,
it was hoped that he would get their defense straightened out. And 4 years ago, they gave up, according to my handy-dandy Phil Steele, 37.6 points per game. That's not going to win you any games. They got that down to 25.3 in 2017. So they cut almost 2 full touchdowns off what they were giving up with what Tom Allen was doing scheme-wise. You had Kevin Wilson over on offense, and he's known as our friend Tim May forever would say, he's a guru. So, you had kind of the best of both worlds there, and a thought that maybe they're going to be much improved. But as you said, they just can't get out of their own way, just can't get over the hump. When you think they're going to win a game, they lose it. And I think some people there who care about football, the few people there who do, probably are wondering right now whether Tom Allen is going to be the guy or not. Is he going to be the next Terry Hepner or whoever that's won there, or is he going to be I don't know,
next Lee Corso?
Yeah, the next Lee Corso, or insert the name of Bill Mallory, anybody who's just mediocre 5-6 wins. It is interesting when Ohio State goes over there in week 3. So they're going to get Indiana's best shot in week 3. It'll be a noon game. So it won't be so hyped up over there as it has been for some of the night games there. But Ohio State will get their best shot. Peyton Ramsey, is he going to be the quarterback, or are they going to put in the redshirt Michael Penix? It sounds like it could be him. So I guess we'll have to wait and see on that. But Ramsey's had a ton of experience the last 2 years. They just haven't gone anywhere with him at the quarterback. So
and they've got a fleet of talented running backs. And Kevin, I heard Tom Allen say this offseason that he thinks that they're going to have a top 20 defense.
Yeah, and I'm going to regrow a full head of hair. I mean, we all have hopes and desires. It doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to realize them at this point. I think that their offense is pretty fun to watch. I'm in the Michael Penix camp. I think he should be the guy. He's dealt with some injuries. Peyton Ramsey has a lot of experience, but that doesn't always necessarily mean that you're the most capable person at that spot. I think Stevie Scott, their running back, who filled in for the departure of Morgan Ellison, I think Stevie Scott is a fun guy to watch. I mean, he's a hoss out there. I mean, he's just an exciting runner. But, when it comes down to the Indiana defense, I think they can do well, but I challenge anybody to name 3 guys on that defense. I mean, they're, a Big Ten East team. I mean, they're a team that we're all supposed to sit there and watch relatively close. And, I'm struggling to name one right now.
Marcelino Ball.
Yes. All right. There's one.
Marcelino Ball.
So, Kevin, following the spring game, which I did actually do an Indiana spring report, and I think 37 people watched it, I could have at that point named 3 or maybe 5 or 7 or 10 Indiana defensive players. But, I'm tapped out right now. Tony, you do your Big Ten position previews. How's Indiana looking?
Well, they do have options at quarterback. But to me, Peyton Ramsey is kind of like he's Indiana in a nutshell. He's good enough to get them in the game, but not good enough to put them over the top. And we see that the Michigan games alone, where he keeps things alive with his legs, but then he also then kills them at the end sometimes with his arm. So yeah, I'm with Noon. It might be time for a change there. Maybe they go with a 2-quarterback system. Kevin Wilson has done that there before, and we'll see, what they do there. But Tom Allen, I like him. I didn't expect to like him. I remember talking to Terry Hepner way back when, and this was a guy where at the Big Ten Media Days, he had a table full of people listening to what he had to say, and you wouldn't expect that for an Indiana head coach. And I don't know that. I'm not saying Tom Allen is that, but if Indiana stays patient, but then what is the end game for Indiana? What is the goal? Can you finish ahead of what is Michigan State the pinnacle? Because you've got Ohio State, Penn State, and Michigan. You can't expect to finish routinely ahead of either of those 3 programs. So is the goal Michigan State? Is it we have to stay ahead of Maryland as long as we're there? Is it 7 wins? Is 8 wins? Because if you're counting 3 losses maybe with the 4 other top Big Ten teams in the East, it's hard to do any better than that when you're in the East. And I'm sure they look over at the West and think, what could we do over in the West? If we had a senior quarterback and senior linebackers, and when everything comes together like it does for the teams out there. But we know they've got good running backs. I'm doing the receivers now. They lose their top 2 slot receivers, but they'll replace those. They've got big outside guys that return over 40 catches each. A couple of guys there. So they've got weapons. It's just, will they get the consistent quarterback play? Tom Allen's a defensive guy. I think he gets quite a bit out of his guys. But what is the best that they can do? And is it beating one of Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan? Because you can't, in a given year, you can't expect them to beat 2 of those teams.
No, I just pulled out my handy dandy Phil Steele, keep referencing it. 11 straight losing seasons for Indiana. Now, they have been to 2 bowl games in those times, but lost them both. Ended up 6-7 both of those years. Have been to 3 bowl games in the last 26 years. So it's not a program that when I speak to Ohio State alums, we get off on this tangent, Alabama, Clemson. It's almost as if the Indianas are playing a different sport. They don't spend the money to the way Ohio State, Alabama, and Clemson. And this is true about Maryland, although, they probably want to. Rutgers, Illinois, any number of these, probably in Iowa State, just as an example, they're not spending the money commensurate with a Texas or an Oklahoma, Ohio State, a Clemson, and Alabama to compete at the highest level. They are just happy to field a team, glad to sell out their stadium when one of these 2 of these teams come through, and above all else, collect their $40 or $50 million in TV money that's guaranteed because people tune in to watch Ohio State and Michigan and Penn State, and for the Big 12, Texas and Oklahoma. They're not trying. And, say what you will, say what you want, but Indiana's never going to be in the college football playoff. And
it's a secondary sport for them.
It's a secondary sport, and I think that this rings true for about of the Power 5. I think it rings true. Let's say there's 65, 68 teams in the Power 5, whatever the number is. This probably rings true for about 30 of them, that they are never going to be in the playoff. They're if they win their conference, they got a shot at it. They're not automatic, of course. That's a big bone of contention, but like the BCS, and everybody brings up Connecticut got in because they were the Big East designee that one year, and they went out there to the Fiesta Bowl and lost $8 million on tickets or whatever it was, playing in the Fiesta Bowl. Their greatest football triumph was a 30-point loss in the Fiesta Bowl. It's just the haves and have-nots. I mean, we've talked about Indiana. yeah, it's fun the 7 days of the year when you're getting ready to play them. That game, a couple years ago, the season opener over there was a lot of fun, but at the end of the day, there's a glass ceiling to how high some of these teams and some of these programs can get. It's kind of cool when one of them, butts up against it every now and then and gets to 9 wins, like Minnesota did with Tracy Claeys right before they, chopped his head off, because Minnesota's won 9 games a lot of years. They've won 9 games a lot of years, and that wasn't good enough for them.
So just at the time, just at the moment that I was going to make a programming announcement that we were launching our Indiana Hoosiers live stream next week featuring Tony, Steve, and Kevin, Steve reminded me, oh, yeah, nobody cares about Indiana football. Nobody's going to watch. All right. So I thought you guys were doing a splendid job on Indiana analysis there. So I figured, hey, let's get back together and maybe we'll knock this Ohio State talk to the curb.
Their football is almost as irrelevant as their basketball. Can you believe that they have had the Big Ten tournament, started in 98. So this was the 21st year they've had it. And Indiana has never won it. Indiana has never won the Big Ten basketball tournament. That is a crazy statistic, I think, when you think about a program that kind of, puts itself out there as the top basketball program in the Big Ten. I mean, they've been lapped by Michigan State and several others, Wisconsin, Ohio State, Michigan, and maybe others.
I may have to apologize for the next 5 minutes that I've turned this into Indiana Hoosiers live here for the last 15 or 20 minutes. But hey, this is where it went. This is where we took it, talking Indiana football in June. We don't do that in November, so we might.
You also had my social statement about haves and have-nots in there that didn't necessarily apply strictly to Indiana. I just use Indiana as my example when I'm speaking to Ohio State alumni that they're never going to play for this. This is special ground right here when you talk about the playoff.
I can't argue with that based on what we've seen for years and years and years and years and years. All right, this is and will continue to be, I promise, Ohio State Buckeyes Live, and we come your way each and every Wednesday night, 9 o'clock Eastern Time.